Greetings all! Today, we will be examining the relatively common grass flying type Pokemon Hoppip, its relatively uncommon evolution Skiploom, and its final uncommon evolution Jumpluff, collectively known as the Cottonweed Pokémon. While they might be among the least threatening of Pokemon out there from a combat perspective, the members of the Hoppip family are still cute creatures that truly go with the flow when it comes to riding the winds of battle. Hoppip possess a small, squat pink body with 4 small digitless limbs, a small tail, large cat-like ears with dark interiors, and small yellow eyes that complement their large mouth. The top of their head is adorned with a pair of large, green, jagged leaves that they rotate at high speeds in order to glide and fly through the air and to stabilize their motion while in flight. Their evolved form Skiploom possess green bodies with the same basic body structure, though their ears have become rather floppy in form. Their head is now adorned with a large yellow flower, which they open and close depending on the temperature and lighting conditions. Their final evolution, Jumpluff, have a round, dark blue body with only their back limbs preserved in their normal state and a slightly smaller mouth, their eyes having also turned a bright red color. Their 4 limbs and the top of their head, where there is a small sprig of green leaves at the base, are adorned with large white puff balls of seeds held in large clusters, which allows them to effectively disperse their seeds over large areas as they fly around. The members of the Hoppip family share in common with some other grass types a very recent departure from the world of normal plants to the world of sentient Pokemon, biologically speaking, and as a result their forms are much more like traditional plants than Pokemon, simplifying their overall biology and limiting their ability to fight in battle as a result. These creatures, though named to be like cottonweeds, are more closely related to dandelions, existing as an evolutionary offshoot of the plant, and live primarily for the sole purpose of reproducing and spreading their seeds as far as they can, and their entire forms are designed for this primary purpose and the protection of said seeds alone. These creatures possess an animal-like form like that of a cat for the majority of their life as a way to deter predatory herbivores that might otherwise try and snack on them, and they need this to survive as their overall stats and powers are quite weak and merely exist as a way of getting out of danger. While these plants are typically associated with the wind, they are not really the best of flyers, preferring instead to save energy by riding strong gusts of wind across the sky, and are quite adept at doing so on account of their lightweight bodies. This aids them greatly in getting from place to place, and they will use this method of transportation their entire life, as they start off with in a juvenile state until the flower on their body appears and blooms, signaling the time for pollination before the flower eventually collapses in on itself and their head and arms become centers for the production of seeds, facilitating their evolution from Skiploom to Jumpluff. At this point, their entire existence is based around dispersing their seeds over as wide of an area as possible, and they are quite gifted in being able to make the most of this time before they perish, usually only after a few months or so in the wild. Their simple platforms are what allow these creatures to possess their chlorophyll and leaf guard abilities as base abilities, but their ability to use even the lightest of winds to travel through any obstacle they come across, even in battle, is what can allow them to also possess the rare Infiltrator ability as a hidden ability. In terms of stats, in looking at Jumpluff, these creatures are really not designed for serious confrontations with others, as their offensive strength is quite weak, they don't have a lot of stamina to work with for the most part, and their physical defenses leave much to be desired, so most of their stats are below average for a fully evolved grass and flying type Pokemon. However, they are able to take a surprising beating from special attacks on account of their need to weather the worst that Mother Nature can throw at them to disperse their seeds, and they're able to move their light bodies around quite quickly, so they at least have above average base special defense and speed stats for a fully evolved Pokemon of both of their types. As such, while these plants might not be able to put up much of a fight, they are at least fast and can take special damage decently well, giving them the time they need in some cases to make the most of the odd mix of attacks and techniques they acquire naturally. Hoppip are very weak on their own, and only have Absorb, Tackle, and Fairy Wind attacks to defend themselves with at a young age, and given their poor offensive stats, they really don't do these creatures a lot of good. Which is fine for them, as they are more about moving from place to place than actual fighting. These creatures are light enough that the mildest of winds can be enough to pick them up off the ground, and they can easily get into the air by rotating the leaves on their head to create an uplifting vortex. This isn't enough to keep them flying for long, but it can get them high enough into the air to find a gust of wind which they can then use to move about. However, their leaves only allow these creatures to move easily in the air in light breezes. If the wind is too strong, they are more likely to get blown everywhere, and thus avoid strong winds if at all possible. If they find themselves in a situation where they are threatened with being blown away by strong winds, these plants will grip the ground as firmly as they can to try and avoid being blown around. In the worst of cases, these creatures will huddle together in masses and link together with their leaves to use their combined mass to try and resist the pull of the wind, which usually has mixed results at best. As a whole, these plants offer little more to trainers from a combat perspective, but outside of that, it can at least be said that these creatures are temperature dependent and rarely ever go outside unless they can ride across warm winds. So if you see a large group of them in the winter, it is often said to be a surefire sign that spring is on the way. When Hoppips start to mature and evolve into Skiploom, their EV yield switches from 1 in special defense to 2 in speed, and the life priorities shift from that of personal survival to that of flower survival, as this form is adorned with a large yellow flower that will ultimately end up being the source of their seeds. As such, it is imperative that these creatures keep their flower protected, as without it, they cannot evolve into Jumpluff and will die shortly after its removal. This flower is very temperature sensitive and will only ever open when the temperature rises above 64 degrees Fahrenheit in order to prevent it from being cooled and its form damaged by potential frost. It will in turn open up more the higher the ambient air temperature is, and when fully opened, it is used as their primary means of acquiring their energy, as Skiploom will float up high into the air to get as close to the sun as possible and use their flower to absorb its rays for photosynthesis. They cannot risk the flower getting damaged, so they will often close it and hide the moment that rain starts to come down, and will not reopen it until they are certain for sure that they will not get it wet. This is about the most that Skiploom do to make themselves stand out from other plants, aside from the acquisition of the bullet seed attack in this state of development, but it can at least be noted that their response to air temperature is so precise that they are often used in poor areas as makeshift thermometers, and work well for this job, as they're usually very easy to take care of and raise, and reach a state of maturity a bit faster than most other multi-stage grass-type Pokemon families. When Skiploom finally evolve into Jumpluff, their priorities once again shift, as their own life no longer becomes that important. All that matters is spreading the cotton-like spore seeds they have as far as they can. They usually do this by riding on warm southern winds to destinations where the temperature conditions are just perfect for them to thrive in, only ever coming down from the air onto the ground when they encounter cold winds that make it hard for them to move through the air. While they really cannot do anything to control the wind around them, these plants are still able to make the most of it and manipulate currents around them to make their voyage as long and smooth as possible, so they are not completely at the mercy of the wind. It is interesting to note, though, that they seem to have some form of unusual and highly limited extrasensory power, as once the seeds have been released, these creatures are able to deftly control them across the globe, and seemingly to no end, each seed having a tiny bit of power that can be used to influence nearby air currents to ensure that they land in a spot where they are likely to find good growing conditions. Sadly, this is mainly a feature because the seeds are very delicate and require very specific conditions in order to properly germinate, but when they do, it can only be a matter of weeks, if not days, before the seeds have developed fully and fully grown Hoppip emerge from the ground, allowing them to use sheer numbers to help populate many parts of the world with their kind. This strange power might not be able to do a whole lot for them in terms of pure compatibility, but it can grant them access to moves like Memento that help to diversify their move pool and make them quirky plants with a few odd tricks up their seed-laden bodies. While they might look more than a bit silly and have little to offer combat-wise, the members of the Hoppip family are nonetheless adorable creatures and always a ball to have around. You might have to do some serious training with them if you wish to use them in battle, but given their tricky antics, these plants can still put up a fight and use their agility to decent effect in battle. Just make sure to keep them on a short leash and try not to let them go off on their own too much. They might be simple to train, but when it comes to answering the call of nature, these plants will be more than happy to take the opportunity to spread their kind across the world if they can, even if they fill the air with so many spore seeds that you end up choking on them the moment you try and breathe when surrounded by them. Thank you all for watching this video. It is always an honor to be able to speak with you all on the subject of Pokemon in a way that brings me great joy and happiness in my work. If you would like to keep tabs on past and future work, click that subscribe button, check out my work on DeviantArt, and don't be shy about following me on Twitter, where you can find pertinent announcements on upcoming work before it is officially posted. Links to both can be found in the video description. If you would like to support my work and help Miguel and I continue to produce more content for you and improve upon our presentation, please visit us at my Patreon page, which you can also find a link to in the video description. With that, I thank you for watching and I wish you well.